They had gathered beneath 1,000 candles to celebrate the beginning of the season. Silk whispered across polished floors. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. Gentlemen laughed behind raised glasses while ladies watched one another with smiles that rarely reached their eyes. And in the center of it all stood Miss Clara Whitmore. For one brief, beautiful hour, she had believed the evening might change her life. Instead, it destroyed it. Before midnight, she would be accused of stealing a priceless family jewel. Before the final dance, the gentleman she was promised to would publicly abandon her. And before the orchestra could play another note, every respectable family in London would know her name for all the wrong reasons. Yet, just as Clara prepared to walk from the ballroom in humiliation, a tall, mysterious gentleman rose from the shadows. The Duke of Ravensmere. A man whispered about in every drawing room in England. A man who had avoided marriage for 7 years. A man who had never once been known to defend a woman in public. He crossed the ballroom slowly. Then, before hundreds of stunned witnesses, he offered Clara his hand. "Miss Whitmore," he said quietly, "you have been insulted enough." She stared at him. "And what," she whispered, "do you intend to do about it?" The Duke's expression did not change. "I intend to marry you." The ballroom went silent. Clara could hardly breathe, because there was only one thing more frightening than being ruined by London society, and that was discovering that the most powerful man in the room had chosen her for a reason she could not possibly understand. Now settle in, let the fire burn low, and listen closely, because the story of Clara Whitmore and the Duke of Ravensmere did not begin with a marriage. It began with a lie. Clara Whitmore noticed the light first when she entered the ballroom. Thousands of candles reflected in the tall mirrors, turning the vast room into something almost unreal. Golden flames trembled above polished marble. Crystal caught the firelight and scattered it across the ceiling. Everywhere she looked, there were jewels, embroidered waistcoats, white gloves, feathered fans, and carefully composed smiles. For a moment, Clara forgot to be nervous. She stood beside her aunt near the entrance, her gloved fingers resting lightly upon the stem of a folded fan. "Breathe," whispered Lady Margaret Whitmore. "I am breathing. You are holding your breath." Clara smiled despite herself. Lady Margaret leaned closer. "Remember what I told you. Do not trip. I was thinking of something more important. Do not speak too quickly. Also important. And?" Lady Margaret's eyes softened. "Remember that you belong here." Clara looked across the ballroom. She did not feel as though she belonged anywhere, not tonight and perhaps not ever. Her father had died 3 years earlier, leaving behind little more than a respectable name and a collection of debts he had hidden until the very end. Her mother had followed him the following winter. Since then, Clara and her younger brother, Thomas, had lived quietly in the countryside under the protection of their aunt. They were respectable, they were well-connected. They were, however, not wealthy. And in London, there was a great difference between being respectable and being secure. Clara had been told repeatedly that this season mattered. It mattered because Thomas needed time to finish his studies. It mattered because the Whitmore estate required repairs. It mattered because several creditors had begun making inquiries. And, most importantly, it mattered because Clara had been promised to a man whose family could solve nearly all of those problems. Mr. Edmund Fairchild. He was handsome, well-connected, wealthy, and completely wrong for her. But Clara had never complained. She had learned long ago that a woman could not afford to demand too much from life. "Look," Lady Margaret whispered. Clara followed her gaze. Edmund was standing near the far side of the ballroom with several gentlemen. He saw Clara and his expression brightened. He excused himself and crossed the room. "Miss Whitmore. Mr. Fairchild." He bowed, his smile was perfect, almost too perfect. "You look lovely this evening." "Thank you. I was beginning to fear you would not come. My aunt insisted." Lady Margaret smiled politely. Edmund laughed. "I shall have to thank her." He paused, glancing around. "Would you care to dance?" Clara hesitated only a moment. "Yes." Edmund offered his arm as they walked toward the dance floor. Clara felt Lady Margaret's gaze following her. The orchestra began and the first notes floated through the room. Edmund placed one hand around Clara's waist. She looked up at him and for a moment, everything seemed peaceful. Perhaps, she thought, this was what happiness looked like. Not passion, not excitement, simply security. She did not yet know that within 2 hours she would wish she had never entered the ballroom. The dance ended and then another began. Clara spoke with several ladies she knew from the countryside. She smiled when expected, answered questions about the season, accepted compliments about her gown, a pale blue silk with delicate silver embroidery at the sleeves. Her mother had worn it once and Clara had altered it herself, spending 3 evenings repairing the hem. It was not fashionable enough to compete with the elaborate gowns around her, but she loved it. Miss Whitmore. Clara turned. Lady Beatrice Langley stood behind her, beautiful in the polished, effortless manner of women who had never needed to question whether they belonged in a room. Her dark hair was arranged beneath a jeweled comb, her gown was crimson, and her smile was colder than the champagne in her hand. Lady Beatrice. I hardly recognized you. Clara smiled politely. That is unfortunate. Lady Beatrice laughed and several nearby ladies looked over. I meant only that you looked different tonight, more confident. Clara wondered if it was an insult before she could answer. Lady Beatrice glanced toward Edmund. Your fiancé seems very pleased with himself. Clara followed her gaze. Edmund was speaking to his mother. I hope so. Lady Beatrice leaned closer. You should be careful. About what? But Lady Beatrice only smiled. Nothing at all. She walked away and Clara watched her, unsettled. Then she felt a presence behind her. Miss Whitmore. She turned. A gentleman she did not recognize stood there, perhaps 35, dark-haired, pale-eyed, a faint scar running along his left jaw. His expression was polite, but his gaze was unervingly direct. I am Lord Hawthorne. Clara inclined her head. An honor. I wonder if I might have a word with you. Of course. He glanced toward the terrace doors. Somewhere more private. Clara's instincts warned her not to follow him. She smiled. I am afraid I must decline. His face tightened. You may wish to reconsider. I rarely do. She turned away. Lord Hawthorne caught her wrist, only for a second, but Clara froze. He released her immediately. My apologies. His voice had changed, there was something threatening beneath the words. Miss Whitmore, you should be very careful about what you say tonight. Clara stared at him. What does that mean? He did not answer. Instead, he disappeared into the crowd. Clara stood still, her heart beating faster. She searched the ballroom, and then she saw him for the first time that evening. The Duke of Ravensmere. He stood alone near one of the marble columns. Alexander Blackwood, Duke of Ravensmere. Clara had heard his name many times. Everyone had. He was one of the wealthiest men in England, owning Ravensmere Hall in Kent, several London properties, and enormous stretches of land in the north. He was also rumored to be cold, unapproachable, possibly dangerous. Some claimed he had fought 3 duels. Others said he had refused 2 royal appointments. There were even whispers that he had spent several years abroad after the death of his younger brother. No one seemed to know which stories were true. But there was one thing everyone agreed upon. The Duke did not socialize, did not flirt, and certainly did not dance. Yet his eyes were fixed upon Clara, not admiringly, not curiously, but almost as though he were trying to remember something. Their eyes met. Clara looked away. When she looked again, he was gone. At 11 o'clock, Clara stepped into the ladies' retiring room. She needed air. The room was crowded. Women adjusting gloves, repairing ribbons, whispering about gentlemen, discussing engagements. Clara moved toward a mirror. She looked pale. You are quite flushed. She turned. Lady Beatrice stood behind her. I am warm. Of course. Lady Beatrice smiled. Did you enjoy your dance with Mr. Fairchild? Yes. How fortunate. Clara looked at her reflection. Why do you keep speaking as though you know something I don't? Lady Beatrice's smile disappeared. My dear, I know many things. Such as? Lady Beatrice stepped closer. Such as the fact that your engagement may not be as secure as you believe. Clara's stomach tightened. What are you talking about? I would ask Edmund. He has given me no reason to doubt him. Not yet. Lady Beatrice turned away, then added quietly, some men become very different when their families discover the truth about a woman's fortune. Clara's face burned. Lady Beatrice left, and Clara remained before the mirror, understanding now that the insult had been deliberate. Everyone knew the Whitmores were not wealthy. Perhaps Edmund's family had begun to regret the engagement. She tried to dismiss the thought, but it followed her back into the ballroom, followed her when she accepted another glass of lemonade, and followed her when Edmund approached her 10 minutes later. Clara. She looked at him. Is something wrong? He seemed distracted. No. Are you certain? Yes. His eyes moved briefly toward the entrance. Excuse me. He walked away. Clara watched him, and for the first time that evening, she wondered whether Lady Beatrice had been telling the truth. At 11:30, the music stopped. The host announced supper, and guests began moving toward the adjoining dining room. Clara remained behind. A servant approached. Miss Whitmore? Yes. Lady Whitmore asked that you meet her in the library. My aunt? Yes, miss. Clara followed him. The library was quieter than the ballroom, tall bookshelves covering the walls, a fire burning low in the grate. Clara entered. No aunt. No one. Lady Margaret? Silence. She stepped farther inside. Then she heard the door close behind her. Clara turned. Lord Hawthorne stood there. Her heart stopped. What are you doing here? He held something in his hand, a small velvet box. You were warned. I do not understand. You will. He opened the box. Inside lay a necklace, a magnificent diamond necklace. Clara stared. I have never seen that before. You will tell them that you stole it. What? Clara backed away. I will tell them nothing. He stepped forward. You already have. What does that mean? Because they are coming. He dropped the box onto the table and walked to the opposite door. Clara heard voices outside. Her heart raced. Wait. He opened the door and before leaving looked back. Good evening, Miss Whitmore. Then he disappeared. The library door opened almost immediately. Lady Beatrice entered, followed by Edmund, and behind them came several members of London's most influential families. Clara looked at the velvet box, then at the people staring at her. She understood she had been trapped. Lady Beatrice was the first to speak. Clara? Clara shook her head. No. Edmund stepped forward, his face pale. What is this? I don't know. Lady Beatrice pointed toward the table. The necklace. Clara stared at it. What necklace? The Ravensmere sapphire. The room went silent. Clara's blood turned cold. The Ravensmere sapphire, a famous diamond and sapphire necklace belonging to the Duke's family, said to have been given to the first Duchess of Ravensmere by a king. Its value was enormous, its history even greater. And it was missing. Clara looked toward the door. Where is the Duke? No one answered. Edmund's expression hardened. Clara. You must believe me. I want to. But you don't. He looked away. That was when Clara knew something had broken. Not because he believed she was guilty but because he was afraid. Lady Beatrice spoke softly. The necklace was secured in a private room upstairs. I didn't take it. Then how did it come here? I don't know. A gentleman stepped forward. I saw Miss Whitmore enter the library alone. So did I, another said. Clara looked around. Who sent for me? No one answered. Then the host entered looking grim. The Duke has been informed. Clara's heart stopped. She suddenly understood how serious the situation was. A stolen jewel belonging to a duke found beside her, witnesses claiming to have seen her near the room, and an absent man who had lured her there. She was trapped. Then the doors opened and everyone turned. Alexander Blackwood entered, the Duke of Ravensmere. The room fell silent. He looked at no one. His eyes went directly to Clara. She expected anger. Instead she saw something else. Recognition. Not surprise, recognition. He walked toward the table and picked up the necklace, then looked at Clara. Where did you get this? I didn't. His gaze did not leave hers. Who brought you here? Lord Hawthorne. Something changed in his face only for a moment, then it disappeared. Did he touch you? Clara hesitated. He took my wrist. The Duke's jaw tightened. Edmund stepped forward. Your Grace, perhaps we should. No. The single word silenced him. The Duke looked at Clara. Miss Whitmore. Yes. Did you steal my family's necklace? No. He held her gaze for several seconds. Then he turned to the room. She did not steal it. A shocked murmur erupted. Lady Beatrice stared. Edmund looked stunned. The Duke continued, anyone who wishes to accuse Miss Whitmore may first provide me with evidence. No one spoke. Then he looked at Clara again. You will come with me. She stared. Where? Somewhere we can speak privately. I don't think I should. His voice lowered. You should. Why? Because the man who placed that necklace beside you has no intention of stopping here. Clara's breath caught. What do you mean? The Duke looked toward the doors. Someone has been trying to destroy your family for months. Clara went still. My family? Yes. How do you know? He stepped closer. Because I have been investigating it. Why? His eyes held hers. Because I believe your father's death was not an accident. The room seemed to disappear. Clara could hear nothing. My father? Yes. She shook her head. That is impossible. I wish it were. Then the Duke said something that changed everything. Your father was murdered. Clara could not remember leaving the ballroom. She only remembered the cold night air, the carriage waiting outside, the Duke opening the door, and herself staring at him as though he were a stranger from another world. My father died of fever. That is what the physician recorded. And you believe otherwise? I know otherwise. She entered the carriage. He followed. The door closed. For several moments neither spoke. The carriage began moving and Clara's hands trembled. Why did you defend me? Because you were innocent. That is not enough. It is for me. No. She looked at him. You knew about the necklace. Yes. You knew Lord Hawthorne. Yes. You knew about my father. Yes. And yet you waited until tonight to tell me. The Duke's expression remained unreadable. I was waiting for proof. Proof of what? That someone inside your family was working with Hawthorne. Clara stared. Who? I don't know. Then why marry me? The Duke looked out the window. I didn't say I wanted to marry you. You said it in front of the entire ballroom. Yes. Then what was I supposed to understand? That I was protecting you. In London, a woman's reputation can be destroyed by a whisper. I know. Tonight, they were preparing to destroy yours. Clara looked away. I could have returned to the country. They would have followed. How? With debt claims. With gossip. With accusations. She looked back. And marriage prevents that? Marriage to me does. Clara almost laughed. You speak as though you are discussing a business arrangement. I am. Her heart sank. You need protection. I need a wife. Why? That is not your concern. It certainly becomes my concern if you expect me to marry you. He looked at her. I do not expect it. Then why offer? Because I believe it is the safest option available to you. She folded her hands. You hardly know me. The Duke's expression shifted. That is where you are mistaken. Clara frowned. What do you mean? He said nothing. The carriage stopped. Clara looked outside. They had arrived at her aunt's townhouse. The Duke stepped down. Before closing the door, he looked at her. Think about my offer. Then he paused. And Miss Whitmore? Do not trust anyone who tells you your father's death was an accident. He closed the door. Clara watched him disappear into the darkness. That night, Clara did not sleep. She sat beside the fire in her bedroom, staring at her father's old portrait. He had been dead for 3 years. She had always believed his final illness had been sudden. A fever, a weak heart, a doctor who had done everything possible. Yet now the Duke claimed it had been murder. Clara wanted to reject the idea. But one memory returned, her father's final week. He had been frightened. Not sick. Frightened. She remembered finding him late one evening standing beside the window. He had said, If anything happens to me, Clara, promise me you will never trust a man named Hawthorne. At the time, she had thought the fever had made him delirious. She had forgotten the words until tonight. A knock sounded. Clara looked up. Come in. Her aunt entered and closed the door. I heard what happened. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Aunt Margaret, did father know Lord Hawthorne? Her aunt froze, only for a moment, but Clara saw it. You do know him. Lady Margaret looked away. Where did you hear that name? From the Duke. Lady Margaret sat down. You must tell me everything. Clara did. When she finished, her aunt looked toward the fire. Your father had enemies. Why? Because he discovered something. What? Lady Margaret shook her head. I promised him I would never speak of it. He is dead. I know. Then tell me. Her aunt's hands trembled. Your father believed someone had been stealing from the crown. Clara stared. What? He discovered a network of men using aristocratic estates to move money and documents across England. And Hawthorne? He believed Hawthorne was involved. Clara rose. Why did you never tell me? Because your father made me promise. He is dead, Aunt Margaret. I know. Her aunt looked at her. And now I fear the men who killed him know you are asking questions. Clara sat again, her heart pounding. What should I do? Lady Margaret hesitated. Then she whispered, Marry the Duke. 3 days later, Clara arrived at Ravensmere Hall. She had accepted, not because she trusted the Duke, for she did not, and not because she loved him, for she certainly did not. She accepted because someone had already tried to destroy her, and she needed answers. Ravensmere Hall rose from the mist like a fortress. Its gray stone walls were softened by ivy, tall windows reflected the pale winter sky, and a long avenue of ancient trees led toward the entrance. Clara stepped from the carriage. The Duke was waiting, wearing a dark coat and silver waistcoat, no smile, no greeting beyond a slight bow. "Welcome to Ravensmere." "Thank you. You will have your own rooms." "I assumed so. You may come and go as you please." She looked at him. Except when I tell you not to." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Then perhaps I should have refused the marriage." His eyes flickered. "You still may." She stopped. "What?" "The ceremony has not occurred." Clara stared at him. "You would allow me to leave?" "If you wish." She studied his face. He was serious. "Why?" "Because I will not have a wife who believes she was forced into my home." Something about the words unsettled her. "Then why did you ask me?" His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because I believe there is no one else who can protect you." "That sounds like pity." "It isn't." "Then what is it?" He looked away. "I am still trying to decide." Clara's rooms overlooked the gardens. They were beautiful, too beautiful. A fire burned in the grate, fresh flowers stood on a table, and her mother's portrait had somehow been placed above the mantel. Clara stared at it. How did this get here? The Duke stood behind her. "It was in storage." "You knew my mother?" "I met her once." Clara turned. "When?" "Many years ago." "What was she like?" He hesitated. "Brave." That single word struck her. "Anything else?" "She loved your father." Clara swallowed. "Did he love her?" "Yes." The Duke walked toward the door. Before leaving he said, "Your mother knew more about your father's work than you were told." Then he was gone, and Clara turned sharply toward the empty doorway. "What does that mean?" The wedding took place 4 days later. There was no grand ceremony, no crowd, no orchestra, only a small chapel on the Ravensmere estate. Clara wore ivory silk. The Duke wore black. As they stood before the clergyman, Clara felt strangely calm, perhaps because she had already survived the worst night of her life, perhaps because she had learned that fear eventually becomes exhaustion. The clergyman spoke. The Duke answered. Then it was Clara's turn. "Do you, Clara Margaret Whitmore, take Alexander James Blackwood, Duke of Ravensmere, to be your lawful husband?" She looked at him. His eyes were fixed upon hers. "Yes." The Duke's voice came next. "Do you, Alexander James Blackwood, take Clara Margaret Whitmore to be your lawful wife?" "Yes." Their hands joined. The ring was placed upon her finger. Then the clergyman pronounced them husband and wife. Clara expected the moment to feel strange. Instead it felt inevitable. As they left the chapel, snow began to fall. The Duke offered his arm. Clara accepted, and for the first time she noticed something she had never noticed before. His hand was trembling. Only slightly. But it was. Their marriage was strange. They lived in separate rooms. They dined together twice each day. They spoke about the investigation. They rarely spoke about themselves. But Clara began noticing things. The Duke always knew when she was tired. He remembered how she took tea. He had books moved into the library because he had noticed she preferred history to poetry. He instructed the cook to prepare her mother's favorite lemon cake. He never mentioned doing any of it. One evening, Clara found him in the library. He was reading a letter. She approached. "What is it?" He folded it. "Nothing." "You are a terrible liar." A faint smile touched his lips. "Am I?" "Yes." He leaned back. "You have become rather bold. You married me. That may have been my first mistake." Clara smiled. His eyes lingered on her. For a moment neither spoke. Then he said, "Come here." She hesitated. "Why?" "There is something you should see." She approached. He opened a drawer. Inside lay a collection of letters. Clara recognized the handwriting. Her father's. Her heart stopped. "Where did you get those?" "Your father sent them to me." "When?" 6 months before he died." Clara picked one up. The paper was old, the seal broken. "Why didn't you give these to me?" "Because I needed to know whether they were genuine." "And?" "They are." She opened one. Her father's words filled the page. "Alexander, if you receive this letter, then I have failed to stop them." Clara's hands shook. She read on. "There is corruption within the treasury, but it reaches farther than I first believed. Several members of the aristocracy are involved. Hawthorne is only a messenger." Clara looked up. "Who else?" The Duke's face was grim. "We don't know." She continued reading, then reached a sentence that made her breath catch. "If anything happens to me, protect Clara." She looked at the Duke. He said nothing. "Is that why you married me?" He looked away. "Partly." "And the rest?" Silence. Alexander. He looked back. For the first time she used his first name. His expression changed. The rest, he said quietly, is more complicated. How? His eyes met hers. Because your father asked me to protect you. And I promised him I would. Clara looked down at the letter. You've been watching over me for 3 years? The Duke did not answer. She understood. You knew about me before I knew about you. Yes. Why? His eyes met hers. Because your father was my closest friend. Clara's heart ached. And you never told me. I thought distance would keep you safe. It didn't. No. His voice broke slightly. That is what I regret. That evening Clara could not sleep. She walked through the house, the corridors dark, and found herself outside the Duke's study. The door was open. He was asleep beside the fire. Clara stopped. She had never seen him like this, without the title, without the guarded expression. He looked tired, almost vulnerable. She noticed a small object on the desk. A miniature portrait. She approached. It was a young woman. Clara recognized her. Who is she? The Duke woke immediately, his hand moving instinctively toward the drawer. Then he saw Clara. Don't. She stepped back. I am sorry. He looked at the portrait. My sister. I didn't know you had one. She died. When? 7 years ago. Clara sat opposite him. I am sorry. He looked into the fire. She was murdered. Clara froze. By whom? I don't know. She understood. The truth came together. His sister, her father, Hawthorne, the stolen necklace, the investigation. This is why you hate society. Yes. This is why you don't trust people. Yes. And this is why you have been investigating my father's death. Yes. She looked at him. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Something moved across his face. Bang. Then gratitude. He reached for her hand. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. The next morning, London received the news. The Duke of Ravensmere had married Miss Clara Whitmore. Society was shocked. The same woman who had been accused of theft only days earlier was now a duchess. Rumors multiplied. Some said the Duke had married her to conceal the scandal. Others claimed Clara had trapped him. Some insisted the marriage was political. Lady Beatrice believed it would not last. She said so at a luncheon. She will never survive as Duchess of Ravensmere. Her friend laughed. She has the Duke's protection. For now. Lady Beatrice's expression darkened. Protection can be removed. At Ravensmere, Clara received an unexpected visitor. Edmund Fairchild. She met him in the drawing room. He looked miserable. Clara. Mr. Fairchild. I came to apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. I abandoned you. You did. He looked down. I was afraid. Of what? My family. Clara sat. What did they threaten? Edmund looked toward the door. They knew about the debts. Clara's heart tightened. What debts? Your father's. What about them? They had purchased some of the claims. Clara went still. Why? I don't know. Edmund. He looked at her. I think my father was involved. In what? He swallowed. The people investigating your father. Before Clara could ask another question, the door opened. The Duke entered. His gaze went from Edmund to Clara. Mr. Fairchild. Your Grace. What brings you here? Edmund rose. I was apologizing. Then you have done what you came to do. Edmund bowed and left. Clara looked at her husband. You frightened him. Good. She smiled despite herself. You are impossible. And yet you married me. Technically you married me. He stepped closer. That sounds like a complaint. Perhaps it is. He stopped only a few inches away. Then perhaps I should apologize. For making you my duchess. She looked up. I don't regret it. His eyes searched hers. Neither do I. The room became very quiet. Clara could hear the fire, his breathing, her own heartbeat. He lifted his hand. His fingers touched her cheek. She did not move. Clara. Yes. If you want me to stop. She shook her head. The Duke leaned closer. Their lips met. It was not hurried. It was gentle, almost hesitant. A kiss between two people who had spent weeks pretending they did not feel anything. When they parted, Clara's eyes remained closed. The Duke rested his forehead against hers. I should have done that sooner. She smiled. I was beginning to wonder if dukes were always so slow. He laughed. It was the first time she had heard him truly laugh. And Clara knew, with terrifying certainty, that she had begun to fall in love with him. 3 days later, Clara discovered the hidden room. She had been searching for an old family ledger in the library. One of the bookshelves seemed slightly out of place. She pushed it. Nothing happened. She pushed harder and a section of wood shifted. Behind it was a narrow passage. Clara stared. She should have called the Duke. Instead, curiosity won. She entered. The passage led to a small chamber. Inside stood a desk and a locked box rested upon it. Clara searched the drawers. Nothing. Then she noticed a loose stone beneath the desk. She lifted it. A key. The key opened the box. Inside were documents, names, dates, payments, and one letter. The handwriting belonged to her mother. Clara began reading. My dearest Alexander, if you are reading this, then I am afraid my husband is dead and the danger has reached our daughter. Clara's hands shook. The truth is worse than we imagined. The men involved are not merely criminals. They are men who sit beside princes and ministers. They have bought titles, debts, judges, and silence. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The man who leads them is someone you already know. Clara stopped. The door opened. She turned. The Duke stood there, his face gone pale. You found it. What is this? He entered. You were not supposed to see that yet. Why? Because I had not finished identifying the final name. Clara held up the letter. It says you know him. I do. Who? He looked at her. Then said, Lord Edmund Fairchild. Clara felt as though the floor had disappeared. No. He is involved. You're wrong. I wish I were. He came here to apologize. He came to see whether you had found the documents. Clara shook her head. He warned me about his father. Because he knows his father is guilty. Then why would he help them? Fear. She stared at the Duke. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. No. Her voice broke. He was my friend. The Duke stepped closer. Clara. You always assume everyone is lying. Because people do. And you? He went silent. She stared at him. You have lied to me since the day we met. I kept things from you. That is the same thing. He looked wounded. She continued. You knew my father. You knew my mother. You knew about the investigation. You knew my family was in danger. You watched me walk into that ballroom without telling me anything. I was trying to protect you. By controlling me. No. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know what is true anymore. The Duke's expression softened. Then believe this. He took her hand. I love you. Clara froze. He continued. I did not intend to. His voice was quiet. I intended to keep you safe. Nothing more. He looked at her. But somewhere between the first letter your father sent me and the moment you stood beside me in that chapel, I stopped thinking of you as a promise I made to a dead man. His fingers tightened around hers. You became the reason I wanted to survive this. Clara's tears fell. She stepped closer. I love you too. He closed his eyes, then pulled her into his arms. For the first time, Clara felt safe. She did not know that someone was watching them from the corridor, and that person was carrying a pistol. The attack came at midnight. A gunshot shattered the silence. The Duke pushed Clara to the floor. Another shot struck the wall. Stay here. No. He drew his pistol. A figure ran through the corridor. The Duke followed. Clara remained frozen. Then she saw something, the hidden documents. They were gone. Someone had stolen them. She ran toward the corridor. A door slammed. She heard footsteps. Then silence. The Duke returned minutes later, his face grim. Did you see him? No. What happened? The documents are gone. He closed his eyes, then looked at Clara. Who knew about the room? You. Me. And you. He stared. No one else. Edmund. The Duke's expression hardened. Where is he? I don't know. They searched the estate. Edmund was gone. So was Lady Beatrice. And so was Lord Hawthorne. By morning, London had received another rumor. The Duchess of Ravensmere had been secretly meeting her former fiancé. The accusation spread quickly. Someone had seen Edmund leaving Ravensmere. Someone else claimed Clara had given him the documents. By noon, newspapers were whispering. By evening, the Duke received a letter. Your wife has betrayed you. If you wish to know the truth, come alone to Blackthorn Abbey. The Duke read it. Clara watched him. You believe it? No. Then why are you going? Because whoever sent it wants me there. And if it is a trap? It probably is. She reached for his hand. Then I am coming. No. You said we were not going to carry this alone. He looked at her. I meant it. Then don't leave me behind. He hesitated, then nodded. Blackthorn Abbey stood abandoned beyond the northern woods. They arrived just before midnight. The chapel was empty. Then a voice came from the shadows. You should have stayed in London. Lord Hawthorne stepped into the light. The Duke raised his pistol. Hawthorne. Hawthorne smiled. You look exactly as you did 7 years ago. You killed my sister. No. You were there. I was present. Who gave the order? Hawthorne laughed. Still asking the wrong question. Clara stepped forward. What question should he ask? Hawthorne looked at her. Who benefits? Clara's blood chilled. He tossed a bundle of papers onto the floor. The documents your father found were not about smuggling. The Duke frowned. They were about succession. What? Hawthorne smiled. Someone has been planning to control the government by controlling the men who inherit the greatest estates. Clara stared. That makes no sense. It will. Hawthorne looked at her. Your father discovered that several noble families had been secretly transferring inheritance rights through forged documents. The Duke's face hardened. And my sister? She discovered the same thing. Clara understood. My father and your sister were killed because they knew. Hawthorne nodded. Exactly. Who leads them? Hawthorne looked directly at Clara. Then he said, Lady Beatrice Langley. Clara could not breathe. Lady Beatrice, the elegant woman who had spoken to her at the ball, who had warned her, who had watched her humiliation, who had always seemed to know more than she should. The Duke stared at Hawthorne. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't. Hawthorne smiled. That's the problem with truth. It does not require belief. He turned. You will find the evidence in the old Whitmore estate. Clara stepped forward. Why tell us? Because I am tired. Tired of what? Being the man everyone blames for crimes committed by better-dressed men. Then he disappeared into the darkness. The Duke looked at Clara. We are leaving. Why? Because we have been given a direction. The old Whitmore estate had been abandoned since Clara's father's death. They arrived at dawn. The house was cold, dust covered the furniture, and Clara walked through rooms she had not visited in years. Memories returned, her mother's laughter, her father's books, her childhood. Then she saw the portrait. Her mother. Clara stepped closer. Something was wrong with the frame. She touched it. The painting moved. Behind it was a hidden compartment. Inside lay a bundle of letters. The Duke opened the first. Clara watched. His face changed. What? He handed it to her. She read. Lady Beatrice Langley has access to the Whitmore accounts. Clara's eyes widened. Another letter. She is working with Fairchild. Another. If anything happens to us, Clara must never be allowed to inherit the Western property. Clara stared. Why? The Duke looked at the documents. Because the Western property contains the records. What records? Evidence. She understood. Someone had wanted the Whitmore estate destroyed because it contained proof, her father's debts, his illness, his death. Everything had been engineered. Then Clara noticed another document. A marriage record. Her mother's name. And another name she had never seen before. Alexander Blackwood. Clara looked at the Duke. You knew my mother before you knew me. He nodded. She asked me to protect you. Why? Because she knew she was going to die. Clara's heart broke. She knew. Yes. And you never told me. I thought the truth would destroy you. Clara looked at him. The truth is not what destroys people. What does? Being denied it. He lowered his eyes. I know. They returned to London with the documents. The Duke arranged a meeting with several trusted officials. But before they could present the evidence, the doors of their townhouse opened. Lady Beatrice entered. She wore black. Her expression was calm. Your Grace. The Duke stood. Lady Beatrice. I heard you returned. I did. She looked at Clara. My dear. Clara stared. You. Lady Beatrice smiled. Yes. Why? Because your family refused to understand their place. Clara's hands curled into fists. My father trusted you. He was a fool. My mother? She was worse. The Duke stepped forward. You murdered them. Lady Beatrice laughed. No. You ordered it. I arranged circumstances. Clara felt sick. You arranged my scandal. Yes. Why? Because you were inconvenient. Inconvenient. You inherited the property. And you wanted it. I wanted what was beneath it. The Duke raised his pistol. Lady Beatrice did not flinch. "You cannot shoot me." "Why?" "Because your witness is standing behind me." Clara looked toward the door. "Edmund." He entered, his face pale. Lady Beatrice smiled. "Mr. Fairchild will tell the court that your wife conspired with me." Edmund stared at her. Then he said, "No." Lady Beatrice's smile vanished. Edmund continued, "I will tell them everything. You foolish boy. My father is dead because of you. He was weak. He was my father. And you betrayed him." Edmund looked at Clara. "I am sorry." She said nothing. The Duke moved beside her. Edmund handed him a packet. "Everything is here. Names, payments, orders, signatures, Lady Beatrice's." The room became silent. Then the front doors opened. Officials entered. Lady Beatrice looked around, and for the first time she seemed frightened. "You cannot do this." The Duke answered, "You already did." The investigation lasted 6 weeks. Lady Beatrice was arrested. Lord Hawthorne disappeared. Edmund testified. The names of several powerful men were exposed. Anne Clara's father's reputation was restored. But one mystery remained. The Duke's sister, who had killed her. The answer came unexpectedly in a letter from abroad. Lord Hawthorne had been captured. He confessed. The Duke's sister had not been murdered by Lady Beatrice. She had been killed by a man acting under orders from the Duke's own uncle. The reason was simple. He had feared Alexander would inherit the family fortune and discover the truth. The Duke read the confession alone. Clara found him beside the fire. "What happened?" He handed her the letter. She read. Then she reached for his hand. "I am sorry." He looked at her. "For years I thought revenge was the only thing keeping me alive. And now—" He smiled sadly. "Now I have something better." "What?" He looked at her. "You." Clara rested her head against his shoulder. "You know, Your Grace, you are becoming sentimental." "I blame you." She smiled. "Perhaps I am a dangerous influence. The most dangerous." 3 months later, London held another ball. This time, Clara entered the ballroom beside her husband. The whispers were different. People bowed. Ladies smiled. Gentlemen offered congratulations. But Clara barely noticed. She looked at the Duke. "You are staring." "I am." "Why?" "Because I still cannot believe you married me." She laughed. "You proposed." "I know. And publicly." "I know. You had the entire ballroom watching." "I remember. And yet you still look surprised." He leaned closer. "I had seen you before that night." Clara's smile faded. "What?" "Before the ball." "When?" 6 months earlier." "Where?" "At your father's grave." She stared. "You saw me?" "You were leaving." "Why didn't you speak?" "Because I had promised your father to protect you from a distance." "And then?" He smiled. "Then you looked back." Clara's heart softened. "I don't remember." "I do." The orchestra began. The Duke offered his hand. "Dance with me." "You never dance." "I do now." She placed her hand in his. They moved onto the floor. Around them, London society watched. But Clara no longer cared. The man who had once seemed cold and unreachable held her gently. The Duke leaned close. "Do you remember what I told you that first night? That you intended to marry me?" "Yes." "You said it as though it were a business arrangement." "It was." "And now?" He smiled. "Now it is the best decision I have ever made." Clara rested her head against his shoulder. "I suppose I should thank Lady Beatrice." The Duke frowned. "Why?" "Without her, we might never have married." He looked horrified. "Never say that again." She laughed. The music continued. And for the first time, Clara realized something. The woman who had entered the first ballroom had been afraid of losing everything. The woman who stood there now had discovered something far more valuable. She had found the courage to choose her own life. And the man beside her had learned that love was not weakness. It was the one thing worth fighting for. Years afterward, people still told the story of the night Clara Whitmore was disgraced at the ball. But they told it differently. They said she had been falsely accused. They said a mysterious duke had crossed the ballroom to defend her. They said the marriage began as a bargain. Some claimed the duke had married her because of her father's secret. Others believed he had fallen in love with her long before she knew it. Only Clara knew the truth. One autumn evening, many years after the scandal, she sat beside the fireplace at Ravensmere Hall. A little girl slept against her shoulder. The Duke sat opposite them with a book in his hands. He looked up. "You are smiling." Clara looked at him. I was remembering. The ball? Yes. The worst night of your life? She shook her head. The beginning of the best. He closed his book, then crossed the room. He lifted their daughter carefully and carried her toward the nursery. When he returned, Clara was still beside the fire. He sat beside her. Do you ever regret it? She looked at him. Regret what? Marrying me. She smiled. Every morning. He raised an eyebrow. Every morning? Yes. That seems cruel. Because every morning I wake up beside the same impossible man. And every morning I fall in love with him again. The Duke smiled. He took her hand. Outside, snow began to fall over Ravensmere. Inside, the fire burned warmly. And somewhere in the quiet of the great house, the ghosts of old secrets finally seemed to rest. The scandal had ended. The lies had been uncovered. The innocent had been vindicated. And the woman who had once walked into a ballroom believing she had everything to lose had discovered that sometimes the greatest love stories begin at the very moment the world believes your life is over. Because Clara Whitmore had not been rescued by a duke. She had been given the chance to rescue herself. And the Duke of Ravensmere had simply been fortunate enough to stand beside her when she did.